Why hello there! It's Adrian and I'm going to give you a tutorial on the basic fundamentals of your camera. And almost all cameras have this, even most web cameras or cameras that are built right into like your Mac will have these features, or should at least have some of these features. The first one we're going to do is called white balancing, and white balancing is one of these ones that even big names on YouTube don't get half the time. It blows my brain. I don't have a clue how or why they don't understand it, but I'm going to quickly show you what it is. White balancing is where you take a piece of paper and you make it so it looks white. So depending on what kind of lights you're using, depends on what color the light is generated in your house. So example, basic light bulbs produce kind of a yellowy orange kind of light in general. Fluorescent light bulbs produce kind of a greeny, and basic outside light produces very blue. So your camera needs to be adjusted depending on what you're doing. Also, if you're mixing these colors, you need to use what's called gels. And I don't have any gels, so I'm not going to give you any examples of them, but I can in the future here. I'll try to get some gels from school, and I'll show you what it is. The first thing, I'm going to show you a couple different examples. I can't do it while I'm recording, so I'm going to have to stop record, adjust it, and then re-show you. So give me 1 second. So this is what inside lights look like when your camera thinks that you're outside. Here's the next one. This is what it looks like if I'm using regular light bulbs, but the camera thinks that I'm using fluorescent. Again, very orangey, very horrible. And this is what the preset is for indoor lights on indoor camera setting. As you can see, I'm pretty well lit. This is pretty nice. I normally would not complain about this, but because I have a little bit of light coming in from my outside there, I'm going to do what's called manual white balance. Not auto white balance. Manual white balance. You can also do an auto white balance, which is okay, but I'm going to do what's called a manual white balance. The symbol right here, if you can find this on your camera, you will be able to do a manual white balance. Now the first thing you got to do is you got to go into your settings, go to that symbol, click on it, then you got to take a piece of paper, like so, just a white piece of paper, and you got to zoom all the way in to this paper so it is as close to your subject as you can get. So, aka, I should have it like right at my nose, but you should make it so the camera is zoomed all the way in and the white is filling the entire page. Then you got to hit set, and your thing will flash for a couple seconds. Hold it still, so you're getting proper exposure, and eventually it'll go through all its settings and it'll eventually adjust so this is as white as it gets. I'm going to show you, I've already done that, I'm going to show you what it looks like now. It'll be a very subtle difference, but it's a little bit different. I look a little bit less red. And I adjusted my camera while I did it. Wow, amazing me. So as you can see, I'm a little bit less red, a little bit, you kind of get picking up on this blue, kind of what I want from an outside light. So this is what manual white balance does. So if you can do that, you can get proper white balance, and it takes 2 seconds to do. So before you start filming, when you're setting up your shots, you're setting up your lights, you're putting up your things you need to have put up, first thing you should do is go to white balance, throw up your piece of paper, hit your white balance, hold it where you're going to be filming, bazang, you're done, and then you're going to have proper white balance. You're not going to have this crazy over-the-top yellows or whatnot, and people see it all the time. Philip DeFranco is notorious for having horribly yellow bleached out videos, and it's one of these things where it takes 2 seconds to fix. So that's your first one. Now that we've covered white balance, let's cover exposure. This isn't something that as many people have a hard time with. Some people do. I've seen some videos that are blown so far out that it just looks like Christmas time, and it's not very good in the long run. Unless you're going for this kind of way bleached out thing, which you might be, you want to really get your exposure proper. Now, as you can see, I'm pretty well lit here. I've set up my lights as my last video has said. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link like right here-ish. You can go take a look at it. It is a video on how to do lighting. So I've kind of set up my lights here. I didn't do a super fantastic job setting my lights. I did enough job that I look well enough on the camera. So exposure, you want to make it so you don't have super whiteout spots. These are also known as hot spots. So you want to make sure your hot spots aren't blowing out. Now I'm going to adjust this because I can adjust it. I'm going to adjust it on the thing. It's going to be a little bit boring, I hate to say, but I'm going to show you. So this is what happens when I blow out. So right there, I've cranked up my exposure a little bit. Not even very much. I've cranked it up like 4 notches. And now, I'm getting blown out. If you're using a manual camera, the camera has an actual like iris adjusted to it, because this is all a digital one I'm using here. It actually is your iris that you're adjusting. So if you have a hard time, you're like, oh, where's my exposure? It's your iris. Same thing. If I turn it way down, you have the exact opposite problem. And this is actually the problem that more people have a hard time with. People kind of have this thing where they haven't lit their cells properly, or they have their exposure cranked so far down that everything's really dark and you cannot really see what's going on. I'm going to put it like -11. That's as low as you can go. So This is what happens when you're really dark and you can no longer see stuff. All my darks, there's no real contrast. It's all really, really dark, and it also looks really bad. So you want to make it so you're not really having these crazy hot spots, but at the same time, you don't want to have it so you have, ooh, that's a little bit hot even. So, let's see, minus one's probably good. This is, you know, a relatively good light setting. I'm a little bit hot on here and here, but my camera produces a little bit lighter. When I'm looking at my little screen, my camera actually shows whiter than it really is. But you want to be careful and play around with it if you have to. You don't want these spots to be blowing right out. So I keep wanting to fuss with it. Normally I just adjust it and I leave it, and then I'm normally happy with it at the end of the thing. So I keep adjusting here. I'm going to leave it alone. So that's exposure. Make sure you have this nice, so everything's well lit, everything has a nice amount of contrast. You know, you can see my darks are dark here, but my, you know, lights are still light. So exposure gives you a proper amount of contrast. You're not blowing things out and looking super white, and you're not looking super dark. You know, both of those videos look kind of shabby. The next one we're going to cover is focus, and focus is the second most important thing you can do when making a video. If you have bad focus, people are going to get a headache watching your video, or going to scream at you, especially with people using HD video now. And, you know, people are notorious for this, even well-known vloggers. Again, the Vlog Brothers do it sometimes. Philip DeFranco does this all the time. These are like huge people that should know this. They make good videos on a regular basis. They can get focus, white balancing, exposure, all these things. They can get these things right straight away by taking literally like 2 minutes. Before you start filming, 2 minutes, set your camera up. Super easy. With autofocus, there is two things you gotta remember. The first one is the camera takes time to focus on what it thinks is the main subject matter. Normally what's most well lit will automatically focus on. So I'm going to show you, this is a close-up of my hand. Now as you can see, my hand is having a little bit of a hard time focusing, but in the background I am blurry. The thing is, if I go too far out and I push the hand too far to the side, it'll automatically rack the focus back to me, which makes autofocus kind of annoying if you wanted something in the foreground and something in the background to be a little bit different, which makes autofocusing a pain in the ass. And the number one problem that people do is a lot of people do this really fast, like jump cut, like I want to do a jump cut here, then I want to do a jump cut here. Now I'm way back here. The problem with this, people don't give the camera enough time to autofocus to their location. So you have this moment of blurriness as it's focusing in. And that's annoying. To me, it's annoying. And now that you've watched this video, you're going to see it and you'll be like, oh, that's annoying. They didn't take that extra second, 1 second, and let the camera focus. I'm sorry, I just ruined your video watching experiences from now on in. How you do this, you can either give your camera an extra second to focus and make sure you're in a specific location when you stop. So move, let the camera refocus, move again, let the camera refocus, start talking. See? Not that hard. I can do it quite easily if I want. And you would never know the difference because I'm giving myself about a second, maybe 2, before I start talking. Or, what you can do if you don't want to deal with autofocus, because I honestly hate autofocus, you can set it to manual focus. My camera, I'm going to set to manual focus right now, and I'm going to show you how you can rack focus or use focus really well. Zoom in a bit, so not necessarily all the way, but you want to zoom in a fair amount. So I'm going to zoom in about this far. And now you're going to do adjust your focus until everything is as crystal clear as you can get it. So not clear, and yeah, it looks pretty clear to me. Ah, look at me, look at my horrible complexion there. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to zoom back out. And normally, if you're using a high-end camera with like an actual lens, you should be able to zoom right tight into someone, so you're like just seeing their lips. Focus in, crystal clear on that, and zoom back right out. And you will have perfectly clear focus. Some cameras, like mine actually, when I hit focus button, it automatically zooms in for you. So you can zoom in a fair amount until you can get it roughly focused, and then hit the zoom button again and it'll focus right in. As long as we stay in this plane, this rough area, so laterally, so I don't come any closer or farther away from the camera, I will stay in focus. If you have a really, really low, so capturing a lot of dark, not a lot of light coming in, aperture or exposure, you should have a farther range of focus. So you should be able to come in really close or go really far and you roughly stay in focus. If you have a really, really high exposure, so you're capturing a lot of light, you got to stay in a really tight area or else you're going to throw yourself out of focus. So if that's how you want to get a really nice depth of field, that's not normally how you do it. those are some tips to help make your videoing better. I hope they helped out. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them my way. I will do a couple more videos. Yes, that's what I know. Have a good day. Ciao.